Hi, everyone. This is acyuta-bhava from Nightlight Astrology. These are your sun and rising sign horoscopes for the month of January 2020. Happy New Year, everybody. I hope you're having a good one. Um, I'm going to go through each of the water signs, Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces in this video, and take a look at the major transits of the month. I don't look at every single transit. I narrow things down every month to what I feel are the most concentrated and dynamic planetary transits, and that's how I focus these. So um, you can also, I recommend looking at your rising sign, because the rising sign is going to configure the chart in the same way that your birth chart is set up. So that's what I recommend, but you can do sun or rising for these videos. The timestamps will be in the comment section, so you can jump ahead to your portion of the video if you don't want to watch the whole thing. Yeah, let's go ahead and dive in. All right, so oops, here we go. So we're going to start with Cancer, and this month is arguably the biggest month of the year, with a huge transit coming up right around the 10th through the 13th of January. We have a major confluence of planetary forces in Capricorn getting together right after a lunar eclipse in your home sign of Cancer. That's really the story of the month for everyone, especially for Cancers, because this is your home sign that's receiving the lunar eclipse. But at the beginning of the month, you're going to see the planet Mercury and the planet Jupiter getting together in your seventh house, which is the house of marriage and relationships, and in some ways depicts your social life overall. This generally means that there is going to be a show of support from people, or that communication and exchanges with people should be positive and good overall. Mercury and Jupiter together can also indicate teachers entering your life, or the importance of learning, the importance of spiritual, philosophical, or even political beliefs within the context of your relationships. These themes can also bring, these planets can also bring good news, kind of the Mercury, the messenger, coming together with Jupiter, the planet of abundance, can mean that there's a good piece of news or information coming into your life, or that someone who likes you or wants to help you in some way is entering your life or reaching out or contacting you. Mercury, Jupiter in the seventh, the shadow side, is going to be potentially aggrandizement, exaggeration, people entering your life who are very intense and maybe very passionate about their beliefs or ideas, to the point that, it might be a little overwhelming. But a simple thing to say about this month for you as a Cancer is that this is a month that's really focused on the house of marriage and relationships. There's a lot going on in that house for you this month. So that's what's coming up. Now, on the 10th through the 13th, that's when the next big wave comes. On the 10th, you're going to get the lunar eclipse in your home sign. And you can see that right here. Here is the moon in Cancer, opposite the sun in Capricorn. So that's a lunar eclipse. The lunar eclipse is in your home sign. Right after that, you've got a confluence of the sun and Mercury, Mercury Cazimi, as well as Saturn and Pluto conjoining between the 10th and the 13th. Their conjunction at Saturn and Pluto is on the 12th. But between the 10th and the 13th, everything is just completely lit up for everyone. This is arguably, again, the biggest transit of 2020. What does that mean? Well, you've had eclipses happening in the first and seventh house for a while. These are the houses where stars appear in the sky and stars set in the sky, including all the planets and the sun, and hence represents beginnings and endings. It also is the axis that represents self and your own identity, including your own health and personality and sense of life direction, and others, your relationships, and things that are happening in the lives of those that you're close to. So the eclipses have been happening in these houses for a while now, and you're in the midst of eclipse season in these houses right now in January, which means that in the broadest sense, there are deep changes at work in the area of relationships, especially, that are connected to your own sense of transforming identity, or that you're starting something new at the same time that things are ending. This can also be about the death and restructuring of partners or partnerships, meaning that a business partnership is restructuring or that it's ending. Saturn Pluto often is about an expiration date, the need to say goodbye to something, the need to be mature, serious, sober, looking at something as it is, not wishing it to be any other way than what it is, just kind of accepting it and taking the adult lessons from it and moving forward. That could be particularly, that could be happening in your relationships. It could also be that there's just a theme of death and endings in general this month. The lunar eclipse in the first house might be asking you about what you need to feel cared for, what you need to feel nourished, or what you need to feel healthy. So evaluating your basic needs, making sure that you are not neglecting yourself in any way, or that you're not being neglected within the context of a relationship. This can also be about family dynamics and the way that your identity is changing as your relationships to family members is changing. So those are some big things to look for. Now, when we go forward beyond that, I like that for you right around the 13th of the month, you're going to see Venus pop into the sign of Pisces and move into your 9th house, which is the house of the higher mind, faith, religion, spirituality, etc. Now, the reason that I like that for you is that the silver lining, this is an exalted Venus in the 9th house, might be that your faith, your spiritual sense of commitment, what am I committed to? What do I believe in? How is it guiding my life? May be really there to help you this month. Teachers, learning, even traveling, or just the way that you're learning to prioritize your beliefs and your spiritual walk in life. That is you're being gifted the generous good fortune of Venus in the house of faith, spirituality, beliefs, learning, and long journeys or travels. So that could be a silver lining this month, considering how intense all the action is in your 7th house of relationships. You go to the 16th and the 17th of the month, and we're in last quarter moon during eclipse season. What that means is that the last quarter moon is a kind of a time, a crossroads where you're ready to let something go and ready to move on. And this is happening around home, family, property, living environment, etc. And it might be a decision that's rooted in your relationship, something that you and a spouse or loved one are doing together, moving in, moving out, selling, relocating. Could have something to do with family drama, family conflicts, having to make tough decisions relative to family karma and relationship karma. But you'll notice that this is a little dramatic right between the 16th and 17th of the month. Now, between the 17th and the 23rd, there's a series of transits taking place in Aquarius, which are the Sun and Mercury moving through Aquarius through a square from Aquarius to Uranus in Taurus. Now, because Uranus and Taurus is in your 11th house of groups and friends, you might be looking very carefully at what kinds of groups or social connections you want to develop or grow, where you may notice that there are some shakeups or changes happening in your social life around this time. You may also be struck with some really important just epiphanies and realizations, which tend to come about through the Sun and Mercury's square to Uranus, that are going to help you to move forward. Don't be surprised if you also are met with unexpected success, help, or allies, later in the month, because that's certainly a part of the Sun, Mercury square Uranus in the 11th is the potential for groups of people or allies to suddenly become more important in your life, or for things to sort of clarify for you socially. This could happen among colleagues as well at work. Then when we go forward to the last strands of the month, we're looking at the 26th to the 28th, and on the on the 26th to the 28th, we're looking. Let me just get it there. We're looking at Venus and Mars moving into a square with one another, as Venus is also conjoining Neptune and as Mars is therefore squaring Neptune. So this is a time of creative, sexual, erotic tension in your relationships, romantically, creatively, professionally, even spiritually. Because of the 9th house, 6th house dynamic, you might be working through a level of conflict or some level of tension in your relationships, and regarding matters of faith or belief, or even political orientation, or the belief about how something should be done or how something should not be done. This is also a great time for there to be a time to clarify your values within your relationships. When Venus and Mars get together and Neptune's in the midst, it's sort of like saying, what is the ideal here? And the tension between Mars and Venus is either sexual, romantic, creative, or it has something to do with negotiating something with other people. Mars Venus obviously has to do with the tension that we feel between the masculine and the feminine as well. So you may notice that dance, even just within yourself, becoming a little bit more intense around that time. That's the 26th to the 28th. All right, let's go back to the start of the month and let's do this over again. And now we'll go into Scorpio. So Scorpio rising, Scorpio sun sign. The confluence of energy this month is happening across your 3rd and 9th house axis, starting on around January 3rd, January 2nd, as Mercury and Jupiter conjoin in your 3rd house. You can see that right down here, just passing out of the conjunction on January 4th. Right away, the start of the month, that's what's happening. And Mercury-Jupiter's conjunction in the 3rd house has a lot to do with the mind, with learning, with teachers, maybe even technology. And the emphasis right now also on changes in your immediate environment, potentially to do with siblings, communication that is, trying to communicate wisdom or advice to someone or receiving advice from someone. The 3rd house often tells us also about what's on our mind or what's happening in the immediate environment around us that's influencing our mental state. And so this is a month of hard decisions, sober adult realizations. The potential to be overly conservative or rigid mentally is there this month, so you want to be careful of that. But the beginning of the month with this Mercury-Jupiter conjunction, it's a pretty fortunate transit in the sense that it can bring good news. It can bring nice educational opportunities. You can expand your understanding of something, learn a new skill, start developing a new idea or concept, receive good news or information from somebody. And generally, the shadow side of this one is going to be exaggeration or aggrandizement or going too far with something or being too zealous about something. So watch for that either in yourself or, with those around you. Now, on the 3rd of the month, Mars is going to pop into your 2nd house of finances, which is means that there's going to be an emphasis this month on action, Mars action, and money, or action and resources. That could mean you're making money, or you're selling things, or that you're getting a pay raise even, or you're getting more responsibility, or you're working really hard in order to earn a little bit more. It could also be that you're dealing with bills or some degree of conflict or difficulty, which Mars can bring around the topic of money, resources, and finances. So that would be pretty normal this month for there to be the heat and intensity of Mars in the financial house. That starts on the 3rd, lasts all month. Now, we go forward to the most important moment of the month, and that is the 10th through the 10th through the 13th, which is really the transit of 2020. And starts with a lunar eclipse in your 9th house of the higher mind, higher beliefs, long journeys and travel, religion, spirituality, the law. With this transit being so intensely emphasized right now, it is possible that the subject of religion and beliefs, maybe even with a relationship to family or family members, plays a huge role this month. Why? Because the lunar eclipse signifies change of circumstance. It's emotional. It's related to lunar things like mother or family, and to your higher beliefs, or potentially the subject of learning, education, or long journeys. Visiting the karma in your family around religion and beliefs could definitely be on the table this month. You're also dealing with needing to grow up and make really wise choices and wise decisions, you could say, because the emotional transformation of the lunar eclipse in Cancer in the 9th house is followed by Sun, Mercury, Cazimi, then Sun, Mercury conjunction with the Saturn, Pluto conjunction, all together between the 10th and the 13th. That points to becoming more mature, becoming more adult, having to make difficult decisions, potentially dealing with challenges or conflicts around siblings or close friends, You know, if you have a neighbor or a roommate, you could be dealing with some challenges around them. But this also, in a general sense, is about the maturing of the mind in relation to the kinds of thoughts or beliefs that you carry. So if you carry, you know, let's say emotionally immature beliefs, this is a month where you might be like, you know, wow, I can't, these, you just do a little healthy growing up. If on the other hand, you're too rigid or tough mentally, and there's not enough, you know, light, love, and warmth pouring in, this might be a month where that becomes emphasized, or some balance between the two. But it definitely feels like a paradigm shift mentally, intellectually, emotionally, perhaps in relation to family karma around beliefs and ideas and the life of the mind, perhaps in relation to siblings or people who are close to you or live nearby you, neighbors even. So watch for those themes. Really intense between the 10th and the 13th. Now, between the 16th and the 17th, there's a last quarter moon that comes through in Libra. And that last quarter moon falls in your 12th house, which means that you have to be really careful, because you may have to look at your own shadows a bit. The 12th house, often a house associated with our own self-undoing. Last quarter moon is trying to solve something, resolve something, finish or complete something. And it's deeper because we're in eclipse cycle right now. So the judgments and difficult choices that you have to make with this last quarter moon, just make sure that you are not repeating old patterns, making choices that are mature and you know, wise and sort of stoic. You know, like having to really, in some ways, leave the opinions, concerns of other people out of it. It's not a popularity contest. It's about getting real with yourself and making the healthiest choice you can. That's a big part of having so much Capricorn energy in your third house this month, is about the wisdom and maturity of your mind. And then the last quarter moon in Libra in the 12th house is presenting you with a judgment call or a choice of some kind, I believe, or having to balance something out, even within relationships, having to make difficult judgment calls. All right, then we go to between the 17th and the 23rd, we have the Sun and Mercury in Aquarius making a square to Uranus and Taurus in your 7th house. Now, Mercury and the Sun in square to Uranus can bring those epiphanies, those aha moments, those breakthroughs, which can be amazing, and it can really help you move forward. Sometimes they're sort of sudden or disruptive. Sometimes the sudden wave of inspiration comes at the same time that something unexpected is happening that sort of disrupts your rhythm. But these awakenings and epiphanies, which will be immediately actionable, they'll be like action steps and goals that will come out of them, typically like right away, kind of sense of clarity. And now I know what I've got to do. And that comes between like the 17th and the 23rd, specifically in relation to the topic of home, family, property, living situation, and relationships with other people. Could be, for example, I've seen this kind of a transit plenty of times when people decide suddenly they need to move out, or they need to relocate, or they need to get out of a relationship, or move out with someone they've been living with, or a sudden, you know, shift in a relationship, like in the opposite direction, like we're going to move in together, we're going to get married, we're going to buy a house. The main thing is that the disruption that you may experience should come along with a sense of, now I know what to do. Something is becoming really clear. And that's good, because that's happening right at the end of this lunar cycle that's featured so much drama and intensity. With the Sun and Mercury in a Saturn ruled sign, again, the idea here is to make the hard but necessary choices this month. They'll really be very liberating if you do. Then finally, between the 26th and 28th, Venus, move forward here, Venus in Pisces will get together in a conjunction with Neptune, and also square Mars in Sagittarius, which means Mars is also squaring Neptune. A lot of tension here in relationships, romantically, sexually, creatively. It could be really good tension, very inspiring tension. It's also about clarification of ideals and values. You're also looking very carefully at how you spend your time, money, energy, and resources, and what constitutes healthy versus unhealthy pleasure. That could be sexual. It could be in terms of what you go out and spend your money on, or how what your priorities are and what your values are in relationships, and whether or not you're having fun or enjoying a relationship. A good be careful around this time of, kind of idealistic, whimsical choices coming in, because of a bit of a kind of romantic intoxication that's in the air. And that closes off the month. All right, that's great. So let's go now back to the beginning of the month. We're going to start over for Pisces. So this will be our last of the water signs for the month. All right. Okay. All right. So Pisces, at the beginning of the month, around January 2nd into the 3rd, Mercury is conjoining Jupiter in your 11th house. So you've got the 11th and 5th house axis lit up this month with all of the big action happening in Cancer and Capricorn. The Mercury-Jupiter conjunction in the 11th house is the house of friends, groups, allies, benefactors. It was traditionally called the house of good spirit, and it was called the joy of Jupiter, which means that it is generally a very benefic house that is supportive, and has to do with the kinds of people that we share some greater vision or unity with. And in this case, Mercury Jupiter together in the 11th house can bring good things through friends, through groups, good messages, good information, a kind of a windfall or some form of support or help. It can also mean that you're being introduced to new people who are going to be really good friends or allies. It can mean generally that you're learning a lot, or that allies who are teachers who are allies are entering your life. It can also emphasize the importance of religion, spirituality, beliefs, communication within groups, among colleagues, with friends. There may be, the shadow side here would be the potential for a little bit of zealousness or dogmatism, or some degree of rigidity around friends and their beliefs or ideas or values, just because of the heavy Saturn emphasis in the 11th house right now for you. Now, as the month goes on, right around the 3rd, you're going to see that Mars has also popped into your 10th house of career to stay for the whole rest of the month. So, Mars brings action, heat, intensity, competition, but also will, courage, force, vigor into the career area of your chart. You might get a boost from that this month. Mars naturally rules your financial house. You may experience that there's a little bit more ambition and sort of mojo. Your foot's on the gas pedal a little bit more at work this month, and that could turn into some good things for you, potentially, because we got Mars configured by trine to your financial house. So that's kind of a nice energy to come in. Especially, there's a couple of silver linings this month. That's one of them. I say silver linings not because the month is going to be totally awful, but arguably, like I've been saying in every video I've made so far, these transits between the 10th and the 13th are arguably the most potent of the year. You've got, if you look back to right around the 10th, we've got 10th to the 13th, right? A lunar eclipse in Cancer in your 5th house, followed by a quadruple conjunction of the Sun, Mercury, their cazimi, and then Saturn and Pluto conjunction. So all 4 of those planets getting together simultaneously between the 10th and the 13th, just after a lunar eclipse in Cancer on the 10th. So how do we put all of that together? We're going to look at the 5th and 11th house axis. This was called the house of good fortune and the joy of Venus, 5th house, and the house of good spirit and the joy of Jupiter, 11th house. The good news for you, if you're a Pisces, is that this is genuinely pretty positive. First of all, there's big changes happening around the topics in the 5th house, say, of pregnancy, children, that kind of thing. Sometimes people are getting pregnant or having kids, or there's sometimes challenges or changes around kids or children of pregnancy during the month. And at the same time, this is a house that has a lot to do with pleasure. It's a house that has everything to do with leisurely things, pleasant things, and things that satisfy or gratify the senses, as well as also just good things that come our way, good fortune that just kind of comes to us. So there may be a change of fortune with a lunar eclipse in Capricorn that is more dramatic or sudden. And sometimes lunar eclipses in the fifth house have to do with changes in fortune that are ultimately positive, but difficult kind of at the outset, because eclipses can bring changes and challenges that go with changes. But this is the house of good fortune. So it's a little mixed. It's like saying, there might be some emotionally challenging events this month, maybe with family or mothers, or even the topic of your emotional life, your body, or your health. But something good will come, or there probably will be some silver lining, some safety nets, so to speak. And that's just the nature of the fifth house in general. Then you're also looking at the theme of Capricorn in the 11th house, which has so much to do with the greater causes and allies and visions that we have for our life. And there are some deep, deep changes happening in that area. That could mean, for example, that your work life is changing, that relationships with colleagues are changing, that religious, spiritual, or professional groups that you belong to are going through some big structural changes, or there's challenges among friends or colleagues, coworkers. It can also mean that there is some need for death and rebirth around how you are defining your life socially. It could also have something to do with, like, for example, I have a client who is a Pisces rising. They're going through these 11th house transits right now, and they're having to leave a student, not a student, a parent group for, what is it? Not a school board, but it's something similar to a school board, because there's a lot of drama happening in the school board, so they're having to leave. It's those types of deep structural changes that might be happening in your social life, professional life, etc. The other thing that can be happening is, as you're like looking at what makes me happy, what fulfills me emotionally, the call of the Cancer moon eclipse in the fifth house, what makes me feel creatively fulfilled or creatively satisfied. The 11th house might be saying, it's not these people, or it's not this group, or it's not this way that I've been orienting my life. It's not the same mission or goal for the future that it used to be. The 11th house is also the house of hopes and wishes for the future. So your trajectory might be changing right now as you're reevaluating where you want to put your emotional energy and attention, or what is really filling you up and what's not. I think ultimately good things are coming out of this, but the transit may require that you make some really difficult, sort of sober decisions, as I've been saying throughout all of these horoscopes. That will intensify around the 16th and 17th, with the last quarter moon in Libra in the 8th house. So you'll see that come through right around the 16th and into the 17th. The Libra moon, of course, the scales refer to wise, balanced, fair judgment. And in the 8th house, the question of what to leave behind. It's a house that's often about death and endings, letting go of things. Also, how much do I care about what other people think about me? That can be an 8th house Libra moon kind of concern. Having to make wise, difficult judgments, though. Remember, Libra is the exaltation of Saturn. So this moon in Libra last quarter, letting go, the cycle dissolving, eclipse season, realizations coming into this last quarter moon usually mean a kind of difficult crossroads. Square to Pluto and Saturn, it's got to be, you have to make your wisest choice, even if it's painful or difficult. In the long run, it will pay off. That's what I'm saying to everyone around this last quarter moon. This may also have something to do with partners' money or finances or something like that, with the moon in the 8th house. One of the other silver linings of the month is that right around the 13th of the month, Venus is going to enter your first house and home sign of Pisces, where it will be exalted. That should give you just a boost. It should have you feeling good, attracting nice things, receiving nice benefits. You got to be careful of overindulgence or sort of extravagance or self-indulgence on some level, but Venus in this house should emphasize your health, your likability, your charm, attracting things to you, even romance. And it's a really nice transit to have, sort of fortifying your first house for the month. Between the 17th and the 23rd, we see two transits in the sign of Aquarius. First Mercury, and then the Sun moving into Aquarius and immediately squaring Uranus in Taurus. Now, between the 12th and the 3rd house, this has to do with probably making some rebellious or defiant decisions, or coming to some realizations that are awakening and liberating, kind of breakthroughs mentally, that might also give you a little bit of homework, like, oh, I'm seeing the way things are. I've been in the dark about something, and now that I'm seeing it the way that it is, or I have this realization, there's concrete steps that I need to take, actions that I need to take immediately. You want to be careful with the 12th house that these realizations are not self-destructive, that they aren't harming other people, or that you're not burning bridges, because the tendency might be to have some epiphanies and to want to kind of go maverick or go, go full rebel. And some rebellion may be necessary. Some feeling of not fitting in or being different may come up during this time. But there is a way of making the shift or creating the revolution that is constructive, and then there's going to be a way that's not so constructive. And this is also part of the wise decision making that you need to have. Really, like the Saturn Pluto just says, get real or go home. It's serious, and it's about making deep, long lasting structural changes to our life, to our psyche, etc. And you're going to get a boost here that will give you some inspiration and further insight as to how to do that. You just want to be careful that it's not willful and sort of destructive. Finally, at the end of the month, between the 26th and the 28th, Venus and Mars will be in a square with Neptune. Excuse me, go back. Here we go. You'll have Venus conjoined with Neptune in a square to Mars. Mars will be also in a square with Neptune. This is between your 1st and 10th house. So if you are single, this definitely could be about romance in the workplace, or the potential for some kind of sexual or creative tension in the workplace. You could also be essentially looking at pondering your identity and how actively you want to pursue your goals, dreams, or desires, how much you should or shouldn't compromise your dreams, goals, or desires. You also want to be careful, because Venus Neptune in the 1st house can emphasize, kind of getting lost in vanity, or in some intoxicated sense of who we are and what we want. And it's kind of like, it's a very glamorous transit, and could have you feeling, what do I want to say? It can have you chasing things that you think you want or need, that are not rooted in the real you. So be careful of that right around the end of the month. And then also, again, just on the positive note, the potential for there to be really productive but somewhat tense dynamics at work, and especially in creative or professional partnerships or work dynamics, is definitely there. In fact, you could also be taken notice of at work this month, or people could really say, wow, you're really doing something special, or something kind of beneficial could come your way, because Venus Neptune in your 1st house will often bring sort of aura of good luck. Mars, in the 10th house is a little bit more intense and could spell some conflict in the workplace at the same time. But this is also a time where you're asking, who am I? What are my ideals? What are my values? And how are they in service to or in conflict with what I'm doing professionally? We'll look at those dynamics towards the very end of the month. All right, so that's what I've got for all of you water signs this month. I hope that this was interesting. Thanks for listening. I hope you have a very beautiful 2020. We'll be unpacking it all together month by month. So we'll see you again in February. Take care. Bye.